Hi, Michelle. Hi, Alexandra.
Hi.
So today we're gonna talk about millennials, tech, and real estate. So that's a topic of conversation that I know me and Heather are very passionate about, and we love to
Absolutely.
hear stories and get people's mind and their thoughts around what that means to them, to their business. So, Michelle, you have a background in technology, from what I understand.
Correct. Yes.
Actually, in real estate technology.
So, what is that?
Well, I started back in tech, I would say in 2007 with a company that brought me to California from Washington State. And all along since then, I've worked for startups for the most part. And one included Trulia. I actually worked at the headquarters in San Francisco. And for me, it was a time and space where the merging of technology and real estate was pretty significant. There were a lot of folks who had a real estate experience that was all paper driven. You had to go into the office and you had to meet with a real estate agent. And now all of a sudden you could do much of that search well in advance of ever meeting a real estate agent online. Right. And so being a part of that sort of dynamic and shift change was pretty unique.
Well, that change started about 10, 12 years ago, and the real estate the technology hasn't stopped, evolving. What do you think it's missing today?
I think that's a great question. It's funny because I used to work for that company and I've done leads from that company. But what I find to be one of the most challenging things is building rapport with people who have found you via their device. So they see you as a swipe or a click and not necessarily as a human being. And so I'm really excited that we're going to get a chance to talk about it because I think that's one of the unique things about RedDoor is how you are merging technology and human experience in such a way that people can understand it almost immediately.
Very cool. I think that the tech-human connection is probably going to be a transformation of a lot of different platforms in the real estate and even outside of that. So I'm excited, and I think we'll be able to have some really good dialogue around how the impact and those changes mean to us as professionals in this industry. So.
Right. Yeah. In the past, people could always need to go through an agent to figure out what houses were for sale. They didn't have instant access through these digital platforms where every house is there. Whether the information is accurate or not is doesn't matter. They don't know. They just know they can get there and they can see everything. But what hasn't really changed is how people understand or figure out what they qualify for or Absolutely. What their max buying power is, what loan options they have. And it's all really overwhelming. And it's actually the most significant purchase that most people are ever going to make. And it's not just the amount of money, it's the emotional side of it. So we have this huge experience happening for people that is emotional and it's changing their life. It's financially
Absolutely.
Scary, and they don't really have any good solutions out there. But how do we bridge tech and human and make a better impact for people to have a better experience, but not lose the part of it that is still needing the human component?
I mean, I think that comes to my next question, or at least the introduction to Alexandra here, is that, she's, not, I mean, you're a loan officer here at RedDoor, and you manage that human engagement, but you come from a passion of data science. So I'm just curious a little bit about what was it that you find RedDoor is doing that matches your desire of that data science and data analysis and that field of study?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking. I have a pretty good mixture in my background in terms of what I studied in college, what I kind of veered off and became a loan officer. And so I have a background in math and education, and then actually through my relationship with Michelle, I actually decided to become a loan officer, and Michelle was my agent for my first home purchase. So when I was considering coming over to RedDoor as a loan officer, I really was thinking more about what do I really want in the future of both the mortgage industry and my career? Where do I see myself? And I've always approached the industry from an educational background, right? So I've never felt like a salesperson, although people are like, oh, you're in sales. I'm like, I really am not. Like, I don't ever feel that way. And so when I met all of these other people that are wonderful in this industry at RedDoor, I knew that I could see myself using data for good and in the benefit of the consumer at a company where we aren't salespeople. We're really just trying to make things more accessible to the consumer.
Right.
So if I could combine my passion for data science and automation and making things just more efficient in the benefit of the consumer, then I'm all for it.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about human and data, it's the human and tech, it's the data that makes that work, right? So the more accurate the data is, the more accessible the data is, the better decision making we can make on behalf of our humans to support and sustain what is it that the buyer or the agent on the other side needs from us. So I wanted to ask you, so how do you see, you from your experience, or you're looking in the future, how do you see the human and tech world coming together? Obviously everyone wants to label millennials, but in my opinion, it's anyone that is, tech friendly, that they want things to happen in a tech manner. How do you see that human and tech working?
I think the human component is going to be the differentiator, because everyone has a device in their pocket. Everyone has a device at home of some way of searching the internet. 99% of real estate sales begin on the internet. So it starts in such a very sterile space. But what ends up being the differentiator is that human experience. Someone coming in and meeting you, but also realizing you do have the tech that will give them the leading edge when it comes time to make an offer, to have a pre-approval in a timely fashion in real time, and those updates that end up being those differentiators in this dog-eat-dog space of real estate as well. Because yes, home ownership in real estate has a human component and a heart component. But in terms of really getting an offer accepted, that timeliness, the accuracy, the data, all of that stuff definitely matters.
So in the stories that we hear all the time, it's when the interaction with the human element inside of a tech, comes together, and it has an easy transformation between something that is automated and something that is real. And how we kind of bridge that gap, right, to make sure that the user never feels that they're being pushed, moved from one person to another person, but really being served. How do you guys see the consumer on the other side reacting to that environment?
I think they expect it almost in a certain sense, because we are a society that has automated so much of our daily lives. So there is some expectation of this should be simpler. Why is it so hard to get a pre-approval? Why do I have to push paper literally across a table for it to occur? Whereas once it's, in this digital format, it's much quicker, much simpler. And for certain clients, such as millennials, it's much more natural than having to go dig up a W-2 and whatnot, in just a paper format.
Yeah.
I've even heard people ask for faxes at some point where it's like, do you still do that?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you speak of faxes. I mean, this morning I was making a comment to Heather. I need to get some cash out of ATM, right? I haven't been to an ATM in years. Right? I don't even, I was making a comment that, I should walk up to the ATM, that money should start coming out, and I should just say, stop, right? But that's what, we want. It's that we want technologies to solve the problem for us, but there has to be a truly a human engagement. It needs to feel natural. It needs to feel like the system is there no matter what. If it's automated, if it's in real time, if it's thoughtful, all that stuff has to come across in order for us to develop an exceptional, engagement and experience, and that goes across everything, right? I mean, as a realtor, I'm sure your clients are looking on your portals and they're seeing the homes that you know that you think that they like. It's like, what do you do after that, right? What do you do once they look at that home? Are you actually connecting with them in a human manner? You know, are you following through a way for a voice of value, or you're just letting them go through that page after page and letting them, you know, decide through it? It's a very unique place to connect those two together. And I think whoever's successful in doing that, they're going to be very successful in what they do.
Yeah.
I think it's much like also coaching, though, that you can go and figure out how to do something on your own, most likely in this world, right? There's YouTube for everything. But what ends up making an experience for a client much more enjoyable, much more valuable, is they're able to have at their fingertip the resources, but they're also able to have a human element that helps them oversee those next steps. This is a very vulnerable experience for a lot of especially new buyers. You want what from me? You want to know my credit score? You want to know my income? You want to know what my purchase power is? I love the anonymity of being able to go on a phone and deal with that as much as I want. But then when I have questions because I don't understand what a debt to income ratio is, someone can eloquently help me understand that in some way too. So.
Right. Or help you identify, oh, in these specific areas, you can make small changes that are going to really impact your maximum buying power and give you more affordability. So it's what you said about having that anonymity is something that has never really been an opportunity to most people trying to understand what they qualify for. They've had to have conversations with people they weren't sure they could trust and really not even sure what can you offer me even after I go through this long conversation with you. So we find that this is an interesting moment where tech is bridging that gap between the human and the opportunity of anytime, anywhere to the consumer. Like you said, they expect it.
Yes.
This is not surprising to them that tech can do this for them. But at the same time, it's sort of fitting it into that spectrum of, okay, now what, right? So I was going to say, we were looking at an article earlier this week that our nation is becoming a nation of renters. And we find that so interesting because the demographic of most of these people is that they do have affordability to actually buy, but they're renting. And the question is why? And the answer has been documented as being because the process is so painful, or they just don't know where to start. They're overwhelmed. And I think that's interesting. I think actually you have an experience with some renters who we're sort of fit that profile that we're seeing as a trend right now.
Absolutely. It's been one of the most rewarding clients I've been able to work with in 2020. And it was really just happenstance where the house went on the market. The price point was really interesting. And I knew right away, like, this mortgage is definitely going to compete with rent. But people don't see it. All they see is a 6-figure number.
Right.
How do they wrap their mind around that when they're working a full-time job, paying off student loans, trying to figure out how to take care of their family and size up in what they think is an economy they can't afford?
Right.
And so literally kind of put an all points bulletin to my friends and said, hey, look, I came across this really cute, amazing house that's so affordable in a part of town that a lot of people desire to live near. Who do you know? And ended up connecting with friends who are actually also friends of Alexandra. And so we were able to share the property with them in advance. We were able to get their pre-approval before they even had an open house. There were just so many ways that we leveraged RedDoor so that we were able to give them, first of all, just the aha moment of, oh my God, we don't have to leave California to be homeowners. And that was huge.
Wow. Wow.
Did they actually buy that house?
We
They're
are
in
closing.
Wow.
In just a
That's
few weeks.
exciting.
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
That's
But I mean,
awesome.
but that's the story, right?
Yeah.
That those renters, they don't know that they can have the option to buy sometime. And even if they knew the options, maybe they're hesitant to actually take action because they're not sure if that's the best option, right? And what the impacts are. So I think it's so important that you're empowering them and giving them the knowledge that for them to be able to say, oh, I want that, right? It's that moment that the empowerment allows them to make that decision. I think that's so key to the relationships that are being built.
But it's also, that moment can be so encapsulated in such a short window. So for example, the house came on the market, and then we were able to hear about it. And in the time that it went on the market and before the open house, my client already had a pre-approval. But more importantly, they already had seen on their own phone the numbers that really broke it down to them in plain text, where I think previously they were always thinking home ownership is great. We definitely believe in it. It's not necessarily for us anytime in the near future, because no one had taken those components and broken them down for them where they could see, wow, this is $100 difference between our rent and owning a house that actually has, more amenities and more space than where we're living right now.
Right.
Wow.
But that real time data, that we always talk about, is that if we can make that data to be as accurate as possible, to be able to have that consumer to be able to say, oh wow, I could do this, right? I think that's so key. So tell me a little bit about how do you think, as you look at your circle of influence, your buyers, your sellers, how do you see technology like RedDoor that says, hey, we're going to remove the friction, the pain of gathering information or data, and we will do it for you. How do you see that playing in your business and how you grow your market?
Time is everything. I mean, when we go to write an offer, as you already know, a loan that's going to be 30 days and a loan that's 21 days are totally viewed differently. The same is true when writing the offer. How quickly can you get me accurate documentation that you are pre-approved? How quickly can you show your ability to perform? And I just think it also, as an agent, gives me so much power to give my clients a sense of control, instead of just feeling like, gosh, we're at our mercy and we're exposing ourselves and our finances and we just hope these people like us enough. It's like, no, you can stand with a little bit more confidence when all of my paperwork aligns, all of it has been calculated as best as it can, and we can firmly make this offer knowing we can afford it and what that's going to look like from start to finish.
Right.
No, that's so important.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, Alexandra. So you've come from a mortgage background, the traditional process, but tell me a little bit about your engagement, because you're no longer are trying to convince them that they should give you information. You already have the information when you engage. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, it's definitely been different. I've had to shift my perspective a lot in engaging with people through a chat and engaging with people, primarily through the chat. And then, we can break off and, meet in person or over the phone or via email, whatever. I'm really molding to what the client really wants from me. And I think you have to have some empathy and listen very well to understand what they want, right? But I feel more empowered as a loan officer too, because I know that our system is going to give them the best option. I'm going to be able to compare everything. So on the back end, I'm even more confident and I'm even more empowered, because I can easily tell that, this is their best option. And because I'm not a salesperson, if they find a better option, I'm going to be honest, but I'm going to want to see the details, right? I'm going to want to compare it detailed, comparison to what we have to offer, and tell them if they have a better deal. So, yeah.
So I was actually curious if you could tell me the difference between you engaging a buyer in a traditional format of introducing yourself versus when that person is in front of you using the tech and you're there to support. What is that difference? Where the conversation piece?
I would say that when I'm not physically in front of a person, they still act with this gratitude for my service in the same way that it is when I'm in person with them, because I'm still responding from a place of being a resource, and they're still looking to me to ask questions beyond my questions that I have for them to confirm the information we have is accurate. They're still looking to me and asking questions and saying thank you. And they have this demeanor that really does feel like we're talking, like we're old friends. And that's been really amazing to me, is that I didn't expect that. I expected it to be a little harder to connect via technology, but, I'm getting smiley faces. I'm getting, enthusiastic responses when I ask for additional documentation when it's needed, and people are happy to provide that. And it is a very different conversation.
That's awesome.
Does it feel like they actually provide it quicker than in yeah.
And maybe it is the anonymity piece, right? That they're on their own time. They've sought us out as a resource,
right?
And they've felt like they could, maybe just interact with us when it pleases them and feels comfortable to them. So we've kind of lowered that barrier in a way.
Yeah.
So on the customer that used our app to get pre-approved and now they're closing their mortgage, what have they told you? What have been their feedback about using the tech?
I think for them, that was really the biggest component of what was powerful is their confidence. Just being able to quickly send screenshots in real time to someone and say, not only do I have some video of the home, but more importantly, you can't even hear me about a house until you can afford it. I think everyone who's in that home buying process guards their heart to some degree. It's like, I don't want to go look at $5 million houses for what? I'm not going to get the key to that one, but my heart will leap for a home that I know I could pay the mortgage on. And so I think that was just so powerful for them. They literally had wrote a letter to the seller, and they had talked about how they had planned to leave California. They felt the economy wasn't going to be something they could afford or continue to compete in terms of home ownership. And so part of their master plan was to eventually exodus California when their kid was about to be old enough to be in school. And for them, you could just feel their confidence every time I'd be on the phone with them. The next time it'd be like, wow, so you're telling me that this could be, and their language was even changing. And once we were in escrow, lots of tears. So that's really rewarding.
That's awesome. Wow.
So I heard that you mentioned something as in that RedDoor is a strategic tool for millennials. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think Alexandra really touched on that. The fact that I'm not a millennial, I'm a Gen Xer, and I am so much on my phone. To the point where I have to completely...
More than I am.
I am, and I have to be very intentional about unplugging. And so when I think about a generation who literally came up with so many more devices to interface with, that is such a natural extension of their way of communicating and interacting with the world. And so when you can choose your time that you're actually focused enough to go and find your W-2s or any of the other documentation, and you can interact with the real-time live feed that is more than user-friendly, it's actually human empowered. And that's completely different because algorithms work only so well. And we can only get so much confidence from that. And I really do think that human component, that's the differentiator in any tech space, because technology is zeros and ones, and most people can figure that out.
Right.
What they can't figure out is how to make the technology human.
Right.
Siri will never sound like anything but Siri, right?
That's right.
That's the same look and feel for, I think, most any technology we interface with.
Well, that's so comforting to hear, because that's how we think. We think that there is a bridge between the human element and the technology. And if we could create a nice marriage between the two and make it a seamless opportunity for the consumer on the other side to feel empowered and knowledge and be able to make decision based on fact. Some of the challenges that we see in the market today is that there's plenty of calculators out there, right?
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that is the option that they're going to have, because there's too many other components that needs to go into to be able to qualify for a mortgage. So we love it. We think that the future is even going to be more inspiring, because
right.
a lot of people in our industry think that technology is about to replace them, and in some ways it's correct. But I think it's gonna make those who are truly passionate about their consumer and their customer, that they're gonna start having more of a higher touch, higher value,
Absolutely.
And
Empowering.
be in the empowering position. I think that is the future, and I think those who embrace it, they're gonna benefit and grow their business.
Most definitely.
Multiple X's. So,
Right.
on that note, we got a lot of millennials out there that we need to go engage with. So we appreciate everyone's time today. So we look forward to many more of these conversations. We'd love to hear more of the stories that of your customers engaging on the app, and Alexandra on the other side trying to support them. So have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having me.